the journey is not about getting to the mountaintop. And if your belief is, I'm just going to slave away at this job, and then when I get there, then I will be happy. And then what you end up doing is you get to the summit of that mountain, you're like, all right, well, this mountain doesn't feel that great. So where's the next big mountain that I need to do?
Welcome to the Happy Engineer podcast, the place where we help engineers like you to build your career, balance your life, and be happy. I'm Zach White, former engineer turned lifestyle engineering coach, and your host for the journey to the career and life that you desire. Hey, I believe that you shouldn't have to sacrifice your life to reach your full potential at work. And what we're going to bring you in these conversations and interviews are the strategies, the tools, and the mindsets that are going to allow you to experience both success at work and success at home. Hey, we do the best we can to keep this free from advertisements. Of course, I can't control what YouTube may throw up, but do us a favor and share this podcast with anybody who you think may like it. And don't forget to click the bell and subscribe and get notifications to our YouTube channel and for upcoming releases of the Happy Engineer podcast. I would love your feedback, and even more than that, love your story. Share with us how these strategies and tools are working for you. Would love to be in touch with you. Connect with us on social media. Find me at Oasis of Courage on Instagram, Facebook, or Zach White on LinkedIn. It's an absolute pleasure to serve you. Now let's do this. Happy engineers, welcome back. You are in for an incredible treat today. It's an absolute honor to have Alain Hunkins with us, and he gave me training on how to correctly pronounce his name. The Midwestern yuppie Zach White struggles, but this is an amazing, amazing leader who I just had the privilege of meeting recently at a mutual event where we shared some work that we're doing with challenges, and it was an absolute pleasure. Like, we have got to connect and get Alain on the show. And Alain, thank you for making time to be with us today. I know you have so much going on. It's awesome to have you here.
Zach, it's a pleasure. I loved our connection when we met last week, I guess it was. And I'm so happy to be here with you and hopefully share some really valuable things with the audience listening.
I just shared the bio in the pre-read. Our guests are mind blown right now. But in addition to all the great work you've done, over 130 podcast appearances. And I racked my brain. I was like, well, how can we start somewhere that isn't where everybody else has always started, just so you could have some fun and variety in this conversation? And so I want you to take us back to 1995. Take us back to 1995 in New York City. If I have my facts right, and please fact check me if this is incorrect, you just finished your Master's of Fine Arts in Acting and Professional Theater. And you find yourself at the Irondale Ensemble Project. And I'm curious, it just was this little 1-year stint on your amazing profile of things you've done that stood out to me as like, that's really interesting. Tell us the story, like what's going on in that chapter of your life with theater and your time there at Irondale.
Oh my gosh. First of all, Zach, kudos to you for digging this little snippet of my year of life out of the annals of history, as it were. So I came to New York in 1995. I grew up in New York City, I should say. But then I came back to New York after in 95, I graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee's professional theater training program, where I got trained as a professional actor, as an MFA, a 3-year conservatory program, really intense. We had 12 men and 4 women. That was it in the whole program. It was modeled on a classic repertory theater company. And the first year, we performed 2 plays the year. The second year, we did 5 plays in the year. And the third year, we did 8 plays in the year. And so basically, year 3, we are performing pretty much every night and rehearsing the next play during the day, the way they used to do when they used to have rotating rep. And so along the journey, I began to get a little bit, I don't know if it was fear, a little disillusioned, like, am I cut out for this business? Because I was an idealist, and I still am in a lot of ways. And I felt like the profession of acting and theater versus my ideals didn't necessarily match up. And I remember mentioning this to my grad school faculty at the time, to which they heard, "You're not sure?" And so they started to write me off actually halfway through my program. So a good example of be careful who you give honest feedback to, because not everyone's really open to hear it. So when we graduated, I really felt like the reason I got into the arts and acting specifically was I wanted to make a difference in people's lives. I think that when people come away from a great work of art, it changes you. And what I found is the actual work itself didn't oftentimes live up to that ideal. So I was really interested in going to work with companies that had a mission of making a difference in the world. And so Irondale Ensemble Project is one of these companies that's been around. It was at the time, it had been around for 20 years. Now it's been around for 50 years practically. And they had a mission: how can we use expressive arts in schools with students all over to make a difference in their lives? And so I had read about them in this regional theater directory, and they had auditions, and I showed up to audition to become a member of their acting company. They had 450 people audition for 3 spots.
Wow.
And they asked me, like, "Why are you here?" And I basically gave them a version of what I had shared. I was really passionate, like, I want to make a difference. Anyway, long story short is they took me as part of the company. So we performed a couple of off-Broadway shows over the course of that year. But the other really cool thing that we did is part of Irondale's mission is they do a lot of education outreach. And they have contracts going back with all sorts of folks. So a couple of things that stood out particularly. One of the contracts was we did some work with incarcerated youth at Rikers Island. And so we were doing arts and education programs for students, kids. And there actually is a high school. It's an alternative high school on Rikers Island, which is quite an amazing experience. And what was great was I was with people who were 20 years my senior, who had been doing this work for a long time. So this is really where I cut my teeth teaching with other people. And so we had that. We worked in a drug rehab center on Staten Island with a bunch of resident youth boys who were there. We used to do HIV/AIDS education programs in inner city schools, junior high schools and high schools. So it was, I mean, it's funny, I look back, a year goes by fast, but that year was very rich and I learned so much. Plus we got to perform too. So it was a full on experience. And I think I was making $100 a week. I mean, it was not paid. I got paid, but I didn't get paid well. It wasn't for the money, but I wouldn't trade that experience for the world. It was such a great experience.
This is really amazing. What was it originally that drew you into theater and fine arts?
So my father's family are all professional musicians. My grandmother, my father's mother, was the first woman to play in a Broadway pit orchestra. She's a violinist, actually. And she actually also played in the Radio City Music Hall Orchestra. And at the time, you're familiar with the idea of blind auditions? And this was not standard for years. And the belief was that women aren't as good as men. Surprise, surprise, right? And so they started doing these blind auditions, whereas they couldn't see who it was. Is it a man? Is it a woman? They try to listen to those high heels walking across the floor. And yes, my grandmother was a trailblazer in terms of women in orchestras. And her husband, my grandfather, was a professional cellist. He was the principal cellist of the Dallas Symphony Orchestra. And then he taught at Indiana University. So the two of them were like, we're talking world-class, high-level folks. And they had 5 kids. My dad's the oldest. And they had 5 kids. All 5 were professional musicians. So I started playing the violin when I was 5. I played violin, but I was always interested in theater. But then I went to the High School of Music and Art in New York, made famous in the movie Fame, if you know the movie Fame, School of Performing Arts. And if you were a violinist, which is what I was, you couldn't do anything else. Well, when I got to college, I auditioned for a play. It was actually Twelfth Night, Shakespeare's Twelfth Night. And I got cast in a lead role in Orsino. The guy who kind of starts the show, the famous line he shares is, "If music be the food of love, play on." That's one of Shakespeare's famous lines. And I got hooked into really enjoying being part of an ensemble and theater in a way that playing in an orchestra didn't do it for me. So that's what got me interested in the arts. And it's interesting because I oftentimes talk about leadership as a performing art. And what I mean by that is a couple of things. One is you think about the performing arts, it's all about your behavior. It's what you say and what you do. And so if you think about leadership, it's all about what you say and what you do. The other thing about leadership is like performing art is you have to recognize you are on stage, in that people look to you with an outsized lens. They are projecting all kinds of stuff onto you, and you have to be able to carry that mantle well. You can't just, oh, it's just me. No, it's not just you. The fact is, you are playing a role. In fact, we all do this in life, right? We put on our various hats or roles that we play. So for you, Zach, I'm sure you at times play the role of a child to your mom and dad. I mean, we all did that and do that. If we're married, we play a role of partner, spouse, husband, wife. If we're a parent, play the role of father, mother, guardian, grandparent, all these things, friend. So we shift our own identity around, depending on who that is. And for me, what I find fascinating, because I try to help people to change their behavior, one of the hardest things to do, and most of the most powerful things to do, is to shift your identity, because that suddenly then shifts your beliefs about what you will and won't do. So I'm fascinated by all this. So yeah, that's what got me into
this. Is an amazing arc to the story too. So beginning from a family heritage of world-class musicianship, which is just phenomenal. And then you started in violin, ended up falling in love with theater, pursued that for college, got the degree, went and had this year at Irondale. So if I continue the arc of this, where's that epiphany moment for you where you just connected some dots for us? Hey, acting and theater and leadership, here's places where they're overlapped in our identity and in our how we perform and our behavior. Where was it in your actual life that those things began to click? Like, where was your epiphany moment that, oh my goodness, this matters for leadership? And you began what is now a 25-year plus journey as an incredible leadership coach. Where did that happen?
That journey actually started while I was in graduate school. I started graduate school in '92. And one of my good friends, a guy named John Wolf, he went off and did this intensive weekend workshop. It happened to be for men. It was a personal growth workshop. And he told me about it, and I went, oh, that sounds good. And John came back, it was really good. You should think about going on this thing. I said, nah, yeah, that sounds good. But I was broke and it cost like $500. So there's no way I was going to do this. But frankly, Zach, watching John change over the next 2 years, and specifically, it was sort of, I saw this sense that John was able to, we'll call it, step into his power. And, you know, we had a pretty funky faculty, and John could be very clear and set very clear, healthy boundaries. And I said, John, where'd you learn how to do this? This is what I've learned from this men's group. They've been going, they had this, after the initial weekend, they had these ongoing trainings. So finally, in November of 1994, our third and final year of grad school, I went off and did this experiential personal growth workshop. And my mind was completely blown. This was probably the most powerful weekend of my life. I was like, oh my gosh. And on this weekend, one of the things that we did was access and do work around what is your personal mission in the world. And so, and for those that are familiar with mission workshops, part of that is, what's your vision of the world? Like, if every little boy and little girl could get their deepest needs met, what would that vision look like? And then what would you need to be doing? What's the action that you're taking to make that vision a reality? So vision plus action becomes mission. And so I came off of that weekend really clear. I had this vision. Well, I'll share the mission statement, and I still have the same exact mission. This is what, 1994, so we're going on 27 years now. Awesome. My mission is to create a vibrant and alive world by kindling the fire of brilliance in people. And so my vision was actually, for myself as a kid, was just like wanting to jump up and down with excitement in the sense of, and for me, that's been always around ideas. And so that was in the back pocket as I came back to Irondale. And that led me to doing some more. I started facilitating groups back in 94 and 95 as a volunteer. I was a junior facilitator in a bunch of these men's groups on a basis, volunteer once a week. And I went to do some advanced facilitator training just to learn and keep growing. And this guy said, hey, have you ever thought about doing any corporate training stuff? And this is now 96. Like corporate stuff. Like, yeah, I'm not a corporate guy. I'm an artist. You know, I was the one who all my friends were like putting on interview suits in my senior year of college. Like, you're a sellout. Who are you? You're selling out. You know, because I came from a family of artists and teachers who were like, yeah, corporate is evil. Oh, you can't do that. And so what ended up happening was I ended up going, this is now actually, by the time this happened, this was February of 1997. I ended up going to, this guy said, come with me. I'm going to this thing. It's called the American Society of Training and Development, which is now known as ATD. At the time, it was ASTD, Association of Society of Training and Development. And they're having their monthly meeting. Do you want to come? Sure. So I came with them. And on the way out, I didn't talk to anybody. I put on a tie. I felt very awkward, corporate group, like, I don't know. And so on the way out, I picked up their newsletter. And when I got home, I started reading through it, and they had a job hotline. You got to remember, this is 1997. There was no internet for the most part. Yeah, and so a job hotline was call this number. And then if you're interested in job 101, press 1. For job 102, press 2. I mean, it was literally, that's what it was. Like touch tone dial prompts. This is how things worked back in the day. And so I listened through, and all these jobs, and a lot of them were really—
Hold on. Sorry. For those of you listening who don't have a clue what we mean by touching a real physical button on a phone, that was a thing. So
that was a thing. That was a thing.
You actually had to press
YouTube it. YouTube it. I'm sure there's got to be a YouTube tutorial on how to do this.
I'm sorry. That is just too funny.
I remember when those came in. I remember rotary dial phones and touch phones were like, that was the new technology that came in.
We had one rotary phone in my house growing up, but I'm not quite a rotary guy, but I'm sorry, I interrupted you. This is too funny.
No, I'm now
technologists on.
Yeah, exactly.
Continue.
I'm definitely aging myself on technology. So anyway, so I'm listening through, and most of the jobs are all very technical skill training jobs, like computer software trainer. I'm like, no, like all these jobs are technical. Like, no. Then I get to this job. It's like job number 107, an experiential training company looking for facilitators to lead leadership and management trainings. Our company values are integrity, accountability, teamwork, and fun. I thought, this sounds right up my alley. Long story short is I ended up applying for this job with a company that was based in Canada. They were looking to expand into the US, and they were looking to hire US facilitators, and I got hired. And this is May of 1997. And their client base was basically the Fortune 500. And I started working with them, and I worked with them as a facilitator. And I didn't have corporate experience, but I could ask good questions and go like, tell me about your biggest challenges. What's it like? What are you hoping to do? And so I became a consultant, and I didn't know that's what it was called at the time. And the cool thing about that work is we used to do a lot of experiential simulations, to which highly themed games in which I would literally put on costumes. And so there was a certain theatrical element to this whole thing. To get to play. But at the same time, we go through the simulation. At the end, then we had to kind of take off the play hat and then debrief it and facilitate a conversation and coaching around how is what we just went through a metaphor or an analogy for what you deal with on a day-to-day basis in terms of your behaviors. And that's where I became an adult educator. And that was 97. And I worked with the company full-time for about 16 years. And so it was from that I started just going out, and the sheer volume. I was on the road. The first few years I was on the road 10, 12, 14 days a month in terms of different clients, different industries. So I got massive amounts of experience. Man, I worked hard, I worked my butt off, but I got a ton of experience of working with groups and learning just so much from just the sheer volume of what I was doing. So there you go. That's a long, winding road to get to where we are.
But I'm really encouraged by this. Sometimes the only way we can connect the dots is when we look backward. You may feel like I really don't know where I'm going right now, and just continue to lean in and enjoy the journey. But I want to circle back to something you said a minute ago, because it's so interesting. I know the listeners of this show will relate to it. The idea that you feel like an idealist. You did then, and there's part of you that still does now. And you said, I want to make a difference. And I wasn't confident that this industry or this line of work, or maybe a particular company, people may have different places they resonate with that. We're not delivering on the difference. We're just in it for the money, or we're just in it for fill in the blank. And I know just from my own clients and a lot of engineering leaders that I talk to, that disconnect between their desire for purpose and meaning in the work that they do isn't being realized, or they're not seeing it realized in a way that meets that need. So can you just describe a bit more about how that comes to life and how important it is in companies and leadership? If somebody connects to that, like Yeah, I feel that same pain. I want to make a difference, but it's not happening.
As I think about this idea of I want to make a difference, I feel like there's something inside of me, and I don't want to die with that music inside me. Call it whatever you want, or the flame, whatever, pick your metaphor of choice. And I think what ends up happening, unless you work with people who frankly have done some of their own personal work, what so many of our conversations at work tend to focus on is what we do. It's like, okay, here's a job, here's a project, boom. And we might have a why behind that what, but most leaders, most people are not very good at expressing the why and having a good, enriching, enlivening conversation about that and connecting my own personal why to your personal why and to everyone else on the team. So then what ends up happening is we end up feeling like we're going through the motions, even if the work itself might be valuable. In fact, all work is valuable if we can understand how it fits in. For example, you and I right now, we're both talking on podcast microphones, and we both have arms. But there's a company that just makes arms for microphones. And there are people right now, and like without them, we wouldn't have this thing. So that's a totally valuable thing. So you could do that for any single product or service in the world. You could break it down. And part of it is if we don't remind people of how they are making a difference in the world. You probably know the story of the two bricklayers. Have you heard this one? So I'll start it and you can fill this one. And so for those listening, you might know this one because it's been around for a while, but it makes the point. So there's two bricklayers and they're working on some project, and you come by and the first bricklayer is working away and they just look so unhappy, and you ask them, what are you working on? And they are just, you can see the drudgery in their face. Like, does it look like I'm working on laying some damn bricks? And he's just pissed off, like, get out of my face. And the second bricklayer, you can get a sense of lightness and ease. Like, what are you working on? And he stops and he has you kind of step back a few feet with him and has a look at the vantage point in the distance. Says, see this? I'm building a cathedral, right? And so again, same work, but a totally different framework and vision and mindset about how we're doing it. And I think first and foremost, the person that we have to lead is ourselves. How do you remind yourself of the why you're doing? Why is it important? Because look, one of the facets of human nature is we can so easily take things for granted until we have those wake-up call moments where something happens and you go, oh my gosh, like that's it. And for me, I'll just share a couple of those along the way. So, we're recording this in November of 2021. My father passed away in June of this year after a bout with Parkinson's disease. And he's my first parent of my two parents to die. My folks split up when I was young, but my mom is still alive. And I tell you, Zach, that wake-up call with my father's death was, and again, these all sound trite and cliche, but they're cliches for reasons because they're true. For me, one of those is don't take your health for granted, because I looked at my father and how he struggled for years with the most simple mechanical things, because Parkinson's is a cruel, cruel disease. So for me, it's just, I can do this. I can stand up, like to celebrate that, because you know what? And I'm going to get a little metaphysical here on, like, this road only has one end, and it's death.
Yes.
And it hopefully won't be today or tomorrow. But to realize that, and I think for us as leaders is how do we show and model the appreciation and the gratitude for the fact that, we get to work on this. It's not that we have to work on this, but that we get to do this. We get to do this together. And then one of the things that I coach leaders on is this, the power, and I'm sure you do this too, to a certain extent with the folks you coach, is you need to celebrate those wins along the way, because the journey is not about getting to the mountaintop. And if your belief is, I'm just going to slave away at this job, and then when I get there, then I will be happy. That is a bill of goods that was sold to you, because when you get there, guess what? You're like, this is it. You're still you. And then what you end up doing is you get to the summit of that mountain. You're like, all right, well, this mountain doesn't feel that great. So where's the next big mountain that I need to do? And whether that mountain is professional success, whether it's an X figure in your bank account, whether it's having a wife and kids, you pick your trophy of choice, right? And this is the thing we're told. If we work hard and we achieve this thing, then we will be happy. And we have to learn to flip that equation on its head. It's like, no, actually start being happy today and do everything from this place of happiness, because it's about who you are and what you become on this journey. I'm off my soapbox now. There we go.
Man, I could let you soapbox for the whole conversation. That's really a pleasure to listen. And first of all, I really appreciate you sharing that story about your dad. I'm so sorry about that. And that is such a cruel disease. Absolutely. And anybody listening who's been through that with family understands. Yeah. The thing you said that stood out to me, and I want to bring it back, maybe I'll say it differently, but the idea of a compelling purpose and a why starts with your individual responsibility to go understand and create that in your life. And I feel like a lot of times what happens is we abdicate that to our company or to our spouse or to someone else. Like, you need to give me a compelling why. You know, this company owes that to me to have a compelling purpose and to make this a purpose-driven culture. Yeah. And I didn't hear that from you. I heard, look, that starts with as an individual leadership accountability. What is it that as humans makes us want to abdicate that? It seems like we should want that, and yet I feel like it doesn't always happen. I don't know. What is your thought?
Well, I think a couple of ideas come to mind on that. Great question. So first is, we haven't seen it modeled. Okay. Again, like I said earlier, very hard to do anything that you've never seen modeled. And also, I mean, I think many of us as humans would recognize, you know, we really like easy answers, and we sort of want some kind of, and I'll call it parental figure, to rescue us. Oh, just, you know, and just kind of, it's the easy out. Just like, tell us what's the answer. Just tell me what you want me to do, and I'll just go ahead and do it. Which, frankly, isn't that satisfying when they do it, as much as doing it on your own. You know, it's funny you mentioned this, because there's been some research. A couple of my heroes are two guys named Jim Kouzes and Posner, who wrote a wonderful book called The Leadership Challenge. Do you have it there on your bookshelf there?
I
anyway,
do. Yeah, I love that book.
Yeah. So if you know that book, and I've picked their work apart and put it back together again, they're heroes of mine. I was so delighted. They both endorsed my book. I was so honored. These are heroes in the leadership development field. And one of the things they found is, if you want to see what drives commitment on people's part at work when it comes to understanding mission and vision and values, it is less important that your employees, let's say, are clear on the company's values and purpose. What's more important is that people are clear on their own values, because that is, like you said very well, Zach, that is the platform from where you have to start. And so I think smart leaders, if you want to harness the power of people's purpose, is you want to give them a place and a time to go, all right, so what's important to you? And how does that connect to what we're doing here as a team, as an organization, et cetera? Then start to look for the synergies, okay? But don't start from, here are our company values, because otherwise all you're doing, it's corporate advertising. Our values are this, you know, we are honest and integrity. I mean, you look at Enron had these great, wonderful values on paper.
Sure, great
And
example.
So, yeah, and it's hard work because it's also self-reflective, right? It's for us to actually stop and think. It's valuable work, but in a different kind of value that we're used to. We're so used to implementing and doing so we can achieve something, as opposed to, let's actually step back and recognize what are the main drivers as to why we would want to achieve. You know, and I think the story that many of us tell ourselves is, well, I don't have time to do that work. Really? You don't have time to think about what's important to you? So then how do you decide how you're going to spend your day? And one of the things I oftentimes do when I coach new leaders, this comes up invariably in the first couple of sessions, is, so what are your values? Are you clear on what they are? And if they haven't, I give them an exercise to get clear and do a sort, because not everything can you value equally. And what you might find is some of your values might be in conflict with each other. And I think a lot of people got clear on what things were particularly important over the coronavirus pandemic, right? So people were going, wow, this whole being around, like I've had many people who said, I had no idea that being home with my kids, like this is the best thing ever. Spending this much time with my family. Now, other people went, oh my gosh, I cannot spend time with my family at all. You know, or you know what? I am never going to do a 75-minute commute each way. I refuse to. And so they made some choices around that. So it's fascinating, but yeah, going back to your point here, clarifying your own values is a great place to start.
If I put my engineering skeptic hat on for a moment, and you work with a lot of all different types of folks in leadership, and I'm sure you can relate to the engineering skeptic.
I love engineering skeptics.
Yeah, I've done a lot of work around this, and I coach my clients in these same veins and see transformational results as a result of doing that work. But let's say the engineer listening hasn't done it or doesn't buy it, because it's very cliche. Start with why. Simon Sinek, great book. Everybody talks about purpose, and numerous guests on this show have mentioned the idea of purpose or meaning. If someone's not really bought in, like, I don't think that kind of introspective values and purpose or mission kind of work is going to have any real impact in my life. One thing I love about your body of work is just your expertise in the brain and the neuroscience and some of what all is going on behind the scenes. If you wanted to maybe geek out for a moment, can you connect some dots for us around what is it about this attribute of the why that actually makes it create results for people who get connected to it?
Yeah. All right. So let's geek out on this one a little bit. So if we think about when you access purpose, we're going to talk brain science a little bit. So we're going to use, and for ththose that are not familiar, the simplified 3-part model of the brain. All right. So you've got your oldest part of your brain is your lizard or reptilian brain. It controls all your autonomic nervous systems, your breathing, your heart rate. No one's thinking about that stuff right now, but it's working. Thank goodness. Then you've got your limbic system, right? The seat of emotions. It's also the seat of where we decide what to do. It's what drives our behavior. And all sorts of studies have shown this. If people really want to dig in deep into this, I love Chip and Dan Heath's work. They have a book called Switch, How to Change When Change is Hard, that really gets into the whole limbic system. The fact is, as much as you like to think you're a logical person and you make decisions based on logic, truth is you actually make decisions based on emotion, and you justify those decisions to yourself with logic, which is pretty gosh darn sneaky of us, isn't it? Which is what advertisers and campaigners know all too well. So you got that, and you got your neocortex, right? That's the part of the seat of decision making. And basically, ultimately, in terms of logic innovation, why we can do things that other species can't. So that's our framework. We got the 3 parts of the brain. Now, going back to this whole sense of mission, purpose, is that when we are connected to our own personal sense of mission, what we're actually doing is, if you put yourself under an fMRI machine at the time, the parts of the brain that light up are the parts and activate are the parts that are in touch with bigger picture mission, wisdom. It's all of this higher level functioning, which is, by the way, where you can make better decisions from. Because if you just go along and think, well, I just got to do this thing because this isn't that important, you're actually operating much more likely from what we'll call the fear-based brain. And the fear-based brain is awesome. It's what's kept us alive, right? But if the goal here around mission is not just survival, it's to thrive. And so if your only goal is to survive and get through your life and say, okay, check the box, I survived, I got my job done, check. Well, then who needs mission purpose? Forget it. However, if you believe in the certain moments that you want to achieve something bigger than yourself, be connected to something bigger than yourself, you're going to want to access those parts of your brain where you can be creative and innovative and start to problem solve better. And to do that, it really helps to understand the why and the bigger picture mission. So there you go.
I love that. That's a great nugget. Go deep enough to scratch the itch. And I'm sure several engineering leaders listening are going to be Googling all of these things later. And actually, just as a plug, I highly recommend folks to go look at Alain's work because it's so spot on. I know your TED Talk also has this 3-part brain broken down as well. So definitely go check those things out. You mentioned the fear-based versus coming from a different place. And this is Oasis of Courage, my company and the coaching that I do. And one thing that I talk about a lot is, am I living from a place of fear or from a place of courage? I'm curious for you, how do you think about the idea of courage, or if there was a continuum, what's on that opposite side of fear for people that would drive them in a positive way versus perhaps making decisions from that older part of themselves?
So the left side is fear, it's anxiety, it's stress, it's worry, it's lack, it's scarcity. So for me, where the right side is, I might call it the wisdom part. And I think courage is definitely an aspect of it. But other things that are also involved with that, I would say that empathy is a big piece. Your ability to really see and feel what other people are going through, as well as to connect with yourself. I would also say innovation is part of that other side as well. And as well as to explore, being curious, thinking of yourself as this curious anthropologist, kind of look at things and being curious. And I'm sure if you listened to Zach's show before, the sense of coaches need to be curious. If you're going to take this coach-like approach, it's the willingness to park your own agenda and really be interested in the possibilities, as well as connecting to your purpose. And then for me, courage is around taking bold action in the face of, oh crap, I got to do something here. Yes, I do. And I step up and do it. Doesn't mean you don't necessarily feel some fear along the way. It's just that the fear isn't running the show.
Yes.
And it's interesting. And if I took all of those categories on the right side, and this might get a little ooey gooey for some listeners here, but I think underneath all this, and I really got this again with my father passing in June, underneath all of this, I call it love. Because I think if you're going to be a great leader, you have to love the people you lead. Because think about what is love, right? Love is time, it's attention, it's patience, it's compassion, it's calm, it's curiosity, it's support, it's all these things. It's not just ooey gooey little romantic love. I'm talking about love in its larger context. And I think if you want to lead well, you want to become better at loving people.
So for those just listening, you didn't see me just fist pump when that came up, but for the YouTube folks, you saw. I am so encouraged by that statement, and I agree 1,000% that underpinning, maybe I'll even say a fuel for courage in my life is love. It's a more core element than courage for me, and so I love it. That was awesome. Man, there's so much I want to ask you and dig into, and we don't have time. I want to be respectful of your time. And so one more quick thing that popped in, and then we'll land the plane. Sure. Engineers, I joked about the engineering skeptic, but we are sometimes categorized as a unique breed of person. And you've done so much leadership training for groups of all disciplines at all levels. And I'm just curious, where in terms of leadership, acumen, or development, our engineers, are we actually unique, or are we just want to be and we pretend? But it's actually, we're all kind of the same, and it's just maybe the mask that we're putting on in the theater of our own life that I'm an engineer therefore. What do you think?
Oh, I love this. This is a great question. Thanks for allowing me to unpack it. So yeah, engineers, I think, are a unique breed. And let's include within engineers engineering like other people who are like engineers. Have you already done lots of engineering jokes on the show already? You guys have your engineering.
Well, not enough.
I have the one engineering joke. Should I share my engineering joke?
Please, I think that's necessary.
Yeah. How do you tell the difference between an introvert engineer and an extrovert engineer?
I do know the answer, but you should say.
So the introvert engineer looks at their shoes when they're talking to you, right? And the extrovert engineer looks at your shoes when they're talking to you. Yes, that's my one engineering joke. So here's what I think about, what I love about engineers is there is this commitment to precision and this desire to get it right that I think runs so much of the deeper sense of what engineers, because think about the way you are trained. Look, if you don't engineer the bridge correctly, the bridge falls, right? If you don't engineer the jet engine correctly, the jet falls out of the sky. I mean, these are big things. And so the sense of precision, there's a strength there and there's a liability there, right? So the strength there is obviously with that kind of detailed focus about what needs to happen, amazing things happen. I was just driving over the new Tappan Zee Bridge, which is now called the Mario Cuomo Bridge, but they just and I'm looking at this entire thing. I'm blown away by something as simple, not as simple as a new bridge. They just opened this one up a few years ago. So the other thing I would say, and this, I would also put research scientists into this category with engineers. And I think this is a potential liability challenge, is that sometimes for people like us, and I include myself in this category, because I totally resemble this remark. If I had gone into a different world, I would have become a scientist, I think. I love this thinking. But for many of us, and plus the way, if you've been through scientific method and or peer review, it's almost that ideas are more vivid and lifelike than other people's feelings. And so what ends up happening is when somebody brings up an idea, I'm so in the, well, that can't be right, or that's right. And I start poking holes in the argument. I don't even recognize that there's another human being with feelings that are being trampled right now because, and it's not that I'm insensitive. I don't think of myself as insensitive. It's just, I'm so committed to this idea and focusing on how, and this is my way of making things better. So I've seen this to be a big trap that many engineers can fall into. But I love the commitment. And what I find also, I love the skepticism, because the other thing about skeptics or cynics, if you can show them the data and show them how this fits and speak to them in a language that respects their intelligence, they will oftentimes become your greatest ally. And so those are some of my quick takes on having gotten to work with lots of groups of engineers over the years.
That second point you made, that ideas are more vivid than the emotions and honestly, the entire reality of what's happening inside that other person, that is so true. And I've never heard it described that way, but my wife is going to love that I just had that moment of revelation, because that's exactly what happens for me. I love to live in the conceptual and the idea world. Yeah. And even as a coach, where I spend intentional time training and working with people in that emotional space, it's so easy to get trapped in just the concept or the idea. So I hope that really connects with the engineer listening as well. And remember, you're not alone in the room with an idea. You are, even on Zoom, you're there with other humans who have real thoughts, real emotions, and real needs. So, wow, I hate to land the plane, but we have to. And I always end in the same spot. And I'm super excited to hear where you'll take us. That great engineering, it's like great coaching, that questions lead and answers follow. So for that engineering leader listening to this conversation who wants to be happy, they want that fulfillment in their life, what would be the best question that you would lead them with today, Alain?
What can you start doing today to become happy right now? Because ultimately, tomorrow is not guaranteed. And so you can have all sorts of visions and plans, which are great. And what can you do today? Because at the end of all of it, we have to take action. So what would you do today to be happy right now?
I love that. Flipping the script, focusing on being happy now. What can you do today? I know people are going to want to hear more from you and buy your book and get involved in the work you do. So would you just tell us, where can people find more of you and connect with you? What are the best places to go?
Sure. Probably the easiest place to go, all things Alain Hunkins, is my website, which is www.alain, A-L-A-I-N, all one word, by the way, ALAINHUNKINS.com. While you're there, there's a lot of resources. You can download a bunch of other podcasts I've been on. And also you can download the first chapter of my book, Cracking the Leadership Code, for free, as well as there's an ebook called Navigating Trust. I've got a Building Strong Leaders monthly newsletter you can join that will also connect with other things I'm doing. I run challenges as well as information about the next upcoming challenge I'm running 3 open challenges a year right now. And also feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And since you've listened this far into the episode, you are part of the end of the podcast club. So if you want to email me directly, it's my first name, Alain, at alainhunkins.com. And I do answer all emails received from podcast listeners.
What an amazing opportunity. I really like that. The end of podcast club. We'll have to do something with that for the future. I cannot recommend highly enough, listener, that you go connect with these resources. And we'll put links to everything in the show notes at oasisofcourage.com, where you're used to going to find things, except for the email. That's just here. So back it up 30 seconds and write that one down. I won't be putting that on the website if you want to take up that end of podcast club offer. So, man, Alain, you have just brought tremendous value today. Thank you again so much. I really do appreciate it. And I feel like I've learned a ton. So I know the engineers listening have, but just a pleasure. Thanks so much, man.
Oh, Zach, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Hello, my friend. Zach White here again. And I wanted to let you know that's all we've got for this episode of the Happy Engineer podcast. Thank you so much for investing your time with me today. It is an absolute pleasure to be able to bring you this content. Just as a reminder, It would be amazing if you would subscribe and share this episode with any other engineers you know who may benefit from this. And if you're like me, I hope that you'll take some notes and, more importantly, take action. In our audio version of the podcast on Apple Podcasts and any place that you go to find podcasts, there's a little more content from me about this episode in the debrief. If you really want to hear about how to put this into action, I'd encourage you to go grab that. But thank you for joining us for the video version of our interview today. And again, can't thank you enough for helping us to get the word out about the Happy Engineer podcast and what we're doing. If there's any way we can serve you, would love to do that. Go find us at oasisofcourage.com or reach out to me on social media at Oasis of Courage. And don't forget again to subscribe and click the bell to have notifications of upcoming releases of new episodes of the podcast. As always, I want to leave you with this. If you stay in your comfort zone, you're not going to grow. So let's crush comfort, create courage, and let's do this.